Hello, Professor in class. This is Giovanni. For today's presentation, I will be speaking on the state of California's budget for the fiscal year 2025 through 2026, from the governor's proposed budget in January to the May revision, and finally, the enacted budget during the summer. I will be focusing on two priorities that changed during each phase. First, government operations, specifically their Department of Public Employees retirement system, and secondly, environmental protection, specifically the state's Air Resources Board. In January 2025, Governor Newsom's budget proposal totaled $322,269,262,000. However, in the May revision, it decreased to $312,894,805,000, resulting in a difference of $9,374,457,000. Now, the final enacted budget was $321,050,481,000, below the original proposal, but higher than the May revision. In January of 2025, Governor Newsom released a balanced budget with an estimated surplus of $363 million. With that, he proposed significant changes to the compensation of state employees, in other words, raises. However, from January to May, the state of California faced an economic slowdown and the repercussions of federal policies and tariffs, which directly affected the amount of revenue the state generated through taxes. Due to the lack of revenue and a budget deficit rather than a surplus, the governor had to change his tone and priorities, proposing no salary increases for state employees for the 2025 through 2026 fiscal year. One of the biggest changes in the main revision was in government operations, which saw a decrease of $897,758,000, a 23.58% drop. Now, upon further inspection, much of the decreases was attributed to Code 7900, which is the Department of Public Employees Retirement System, which experienced a negative change of $879 million, representing a 60.54 decrease. Originally, the department had a budget of $1.452 billion, but it was reduced to $573 million. Now, this department oversees state employees and CalPERS, which is a state's retirement program for government employees. The final approved budget showed a budget for the government operations at $2,933,158,000, lower than the original January proposal of $3,806,823,000, and slightly above the May revision of $2,909,065,000. Now, as for Code 7900, the Department of Public Employees Retirement System's final approved budget was $584 million, slightly above the May revision. However, state employees were not the only ones affected by the economic downturn. The environment suffered as well. The second most severely cut priority for the governor's budget was environmental protection. In January, the proposed budget was $4,842,896,000. However, in the May revision, it was reduced to $4,383,478,000. The biggest loss was in Code 3900, which is the state's Air Resources Board. The California Air Resources Board is the lead agency responsible for protecting and improving our air quality throughout the state. One of their key responsibilities is to oversee air pollution research, review, and evaluation of federal standards set by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and develop action plans and implementation strategies to ensure that Californians can meet and sustain the required standards. Now, in May of this year, changes in federal policies at the EPA resulted in the cancellation of 400 environmental grants totaling 1.7 billion. California was on the receiving end of this policy change, resulting in a loss of at least 62 grants. The final enacted bill allocated funds for environmental protection with a budget of 4,285,173,000, which is even lower than the May revision. Now, the State Air Resource Board went from an original budget of $1,156,887,000 in January to a revised budget of $668,376,000 in May to a final approved budget of $841,371,000. Now, my final thoughts. What the state budget shows us is that our state's economic priorities are not self-isolated, but work in conjunction with the federal government mandates, the overall economy, and political tensions. Here are the references regarding Governor Newsom's original proposal and the anticipated surplus, along with the statement of government increases for state employees. Now, additionally, here is also the article regarding the May's revision and the inability to maintain those promises and priority. And lastly, I included the article regarding the EPA grant cuts. In case anyone of you would like to use them, I will also place them on the board itself. With that, this brings an end to my presentation. Now, I cannot wait to see all of your presentations and have a blessed week. Goodbye.